morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Excellent. This is my quality of life. I'm a passionate fan of travel, and I love traveling with friends and also with my family. So this is me at a conference earlier this year in May in Chicago, jumping on the L to go downtown. And then just last week, home is North Carolina. We went a mile high with my wife Jennifer and my two boys in the background. Stefan mentioned I'm obsessed with this idea of goldfish. And the idea that little things can truly make the biggest difference. But first, a story. This is Brandon Cook and his grandmother. And 2 years ago, Brandon was visiting his grandmother in hospital. And unfortunately, she was down to her last few days. She had pancreatic cancer. And one of the horrible side effects of pancreatic cancer is that it really screws with your digestive system. And she was getting to the point where she could no longer eat. And she looked at her grandson and she said, "Brandon, you know what I would really like? I'd really like some soup." But she said, "Not the shit that they serve here at the hospital." She said, "What I would really like is a cup of clam chowder from a place in the States called Panera. They make this really nice bread bowl." Now, the only problem, in the summertime, Panera only makes clam chowder on Fridays. This was a Monday. But Brandon, being the millennial he is, he takes out his smartphone, he finds the Panera in Nashua, New Hampshire, and he makes the call. And he gets Sue, the manager, on the phone, and he quickly explains the situation to Sue. And immediately she says, "Come on down, Brandon. We'd be more than happy to help you." So he goes down to the Panera. Sue gives him the clam chowder. In fact, she gives him a little thing of cookies for he and his grandmother to share. And he goes back to the hospital and he has a wonderful lunch with his grandmother. And he's driving home that night and he thinks to himself, that was a little thing that Panera did, but it really meant a lot to he and his grandmother. So he's so motivated when he goes home, he decides to write a Facebook post about the experience. Now, how do we know that Brandon is a good kid? He's friends with his mom on Facebook. His mom sees the post. She is so floored by it. She copies it. She places it here on Panera's Facebook page. And that's when something magical happened. When I came across this post just 3 weeks later, when someone pointed it out to me, I was the 810,000th, 801st person to like this post. This single post got nearly 36,000 comments. Why? Why did this resonate with people so much? I'd like to think that if I was the manager at Panera and I got the phone call, that I would have done the little extra, maybe even done the cookies. But I think what we all know as customers, what we see here, we see as common sense, but is definitely not common practice. Fast forward, this happened in 2012. Panera is what they call a QSR, a quick serve restaurant. If you're a QSR, if your same store sales go up by double digits, that's like unheard of year over year. Third quarter 2012, Wall Street Journal reported 28% growth at Panera. Fourth quarter, it was 34%. Now, it wasn't just because of Brandon and his grandmother. I believe it's because they have a culture that empowers employees and allows them to do the little extra. So we're going to talk about this idea of the purple goldfish. And as you think about it today, I want you to think of two things. First, for the company that you work for or the companies you serve, how can you help them to do the little extra? And then I also want you to look at yourself. Take a look at the mirror, in the mirror, and look at yourself and maybe how you can apply these principles. Now, by way of background, I have a consultancy called 9-Inch Marketing. And before anyone looks at me sideways, there's nothing personal about the 9 inches, unfortunately. 9 inches is simply 23 centimeters, about that big. It is the distance between the stem of your brain and the top of your heart. And this is a neat little party trick. Can everybody do this for me? For both men and women, for about 90% of people, the distance between your thumb and your pinky is 9 inches or 23 centimeters. You've got a built-in ruler right here. The work that I do at 9-Inch is simple. I work with brands to get them closer to the heart of their customers and their employees. For too long, our work in marketing, and that's my background, has been about the eyes and the ears. How can we interrupt people and get their attention? Not enough emphasis in marketing is about creating experience through design that truly reaches the heart. Now, I have a confession to make. I talk to people about the value of creating experience, about focusing on the customers you already have. But for my first 15 years in marketing, to my days on the brand side with Adidas, to working with the New York Yankees, the PGA of America, and on the agency side with a group called Synergy, everything I did for 15 years was about making the logo bigger. I did things that were so big, they were designed to be on the front page of a newspaper or to be the lead story on the news for folks like KFC, M&M's, Starbucks, Walmart, Unilever. I'll show you a couple examples. I helped create the world's largest logo. This was built out in Nevada at Area 51. It was so big you could see it from space. How do I know that? We shot it with the Google satellite. $650 million media impressions. I've created a 20-meter tall M&M. Took it right under the Brooklyn Bridge, put it right in front of Lady Liberty herself. For Starbucks, I rebuilt the original Starbucks in Seattle for one day in New York City. This was an event that Howard Schultz said was the largest and the loudest that Starbucks had ever done. This was to help launch Pike Place Roast, their signature coffee. I put a 15-meter Viking ship into Times Square for Walmart to launch How to Train Your Dragon. Now, when I did this, I'm like, this is getting to be a little too much. But I really knew I went a little bit too far when I gave away a Mediterranean island. And this is, I don't know if you have this brand here, but it's a weird brand in the state. It's called I Can't Believe It's Not Butter, with none other than Fabio. Now, I realized I was part of the problem And 5 years ago, I had a moment of truth in New York City. And I don't have the time to get through the story, but it was a life-changing event where someone switched a paradigm for me and challenged me that there's no such thing as meeting expectations. So I started to look for companies that did that little extra, that went above and beyond, and I got really excited when I came across these guys. Southwest Airlines, 5 years ago, did something amazing. When all of the other carriers decided to charge for checked baggage, what did Southwest do? Bags fly free. They went from being a low-cost leader to now a brand that competed on the value that they provided. I was also impressed by this guy, Tony Hsieh, who did something that people said couldn't be done, selling shoes online. Built it into a billion-dollar brand with literally buying no traditional advertising. He invested into the experience and did the little extras. So these were great big brands, but I felt like I needed to go further, and I started a crowdsourcing project, and it was called the Purple Goldfish Project. Now, why purple and why a goldfish? Let's start with the goldfish first. The goldfish is a direct reference to Kimpton. Has anyone here stayed at a Kimpton property? Okay, a few people. Mostly in the States. These guys absolutely get the concept of doing the little extra. You stay at a Kimpton, there's always gourmet coffee for free in the lobby. There's fresh fruit. In the afternoon, they do wine tasting. They're dog-friendly, pet-friendly, but my favorite, if you stay at a Kimpton for a couple days, maybe you're getting a little lonely, these guys will give you a pet goldfish for your stay. They call it guppy love. And so I love this idea of a metaphor of a goldfish being something small. So that's the idea behind a goldfish, little things. But why purple? Purple is an ode to an iconic American city. That city, New Orleans. And its most famous event, which is Mardi Gras. Purple's one of 3 colors of Mardi Gras: purple, green, and gold. And the reason why it's an ode to New Orleans is there's one word that comes from New Orleans that exemplifies this entire concept. And it's a word that Mark Twain once said was worth traveling all the way to New Orleans to get. And it's called lagniappe. Lagniappe is French and Spanish. It's Creole for a little something extra or to give more. And so it's the idea of always trying to do a little something extra to exceed expectations. I looked at all 1,000+ examples that I got, and it came clear to me that there were some key ingredients of doing the little extra. And so these ingredients I call rules, and rules is an acronym. And the R is the starting point, and that's relevancy. Whatever you do as the little extra, it needs to be seen as added value by your customer. So relevancy is always the starting point. The U in rules, unexpected. How do you leverage surprise and delight to make that experience memorable? Relevant, unexpected. The L is for limited. Limited is the idea of how do you do something that's rare or hard to copy, that's signature to who you are as a brand. Relevant, unexpected, limited. The E is for expression. With expression, a lot of times with expression, it doesn't matter what you give, it's rather how you give it. And so it needs to come across as something authentic, something that honors the relationship and goes beyond the transaction. Relevant, unexpected, limited expression. The S is for sticky. So how do you make something that's memorable? Is it going to pass the water cooler test? Is it going to promote word of mouth for the brand? So there are the rules. I looked across all of the examples, and it came clear to me that there was 12 ways that you can do this. We don't have a ton of time, so I want to share just a handful of ways. One of my favorite examples comes from DoubleTree. Has anyone here stayed at a DoubleTree? Okay. If I mention to you purple goldfish, what's DoubleTree's purple goldfish? Just a cookie?
Warm cookies.
A warm cookie, right? Individually wrapped, filled with chocolate chips. I mean, this cookie is so good. My friend Jeff Hazlett used to be the CMO at Kodak. He says when he stays at other hotels, he dreams about these cookies. They're that good. Pay it forward. How do you tie with a sense of purpose and give people a reason by doing a little extra to honor you? And this comes from Portland, Oregon. It's a place called Plaza Cleaners. And if you're unemployed or out of work in Portland, you need a suit cleaned for an interview, you can bring it to Plaza, and they'll clean it for free. Simply following up and saying thank you can make a huge difference. And this is a guy by the name of Jack Mitchell. He has a very successful clothing store in Connecticut in the States. A couple years ago, he wrote 1,783 handwritten notes to his customers, just connecting with them and saying thank you for their business. Added service. The little extra sometimes doesn't have to cost anything. This is a company in the States called SafeLight. They'll come out and they'll actually repair your windshield. They've got this, if you've got a crack in your windshield, they have this funky contraption, and they literally drill a hole into your crack. That came across. They drill a hole into your windshield. And they fill it with an epoxy resin. And it takes 10 minutes for the resin to harden. So the technician goes back to their van, they grab glass cleaner and a vacuum. And for the remainder of that time, they clean the entire interior of your car. When you come out, not only does your windshield look like it's new, but your car looks like it rolled right off the lot. Totally unexpected and memorable. Last one I want to share is handling mistakes. We all make mistakes. It's how we handle them that can make a difference. This comes from Canada, a place called Nurse Next Door. They're a home health care provider. When they screw up, they write a handwritten note of apology, but they also send a freshly baked apple pie. Literally a humble pie to apologize. Each year they spend $2,000 on pies. They know it equates to over $100,000 in lost business. Mark mentioned we're both around, we're doing the panel. I'm going to skip Q&A because I have one last story. Please find me. I'm going to be here through Wednesday night if you have questions. I want to finish with one last story, and it's about Walt Disney. In 1957, Disneyland had only been open for 2 years, and Walt was an idea guy. In November, he said, right, for the entire month of December, we're going to do a parade right down Main Street. It was going to cost Disney $350,000. I mean, that's over $4 million today. Well, of course, his accountants heard that, and they flipped out. The finance guys found Walt, and they sat him down and said, Walt, don't do the parade. They said, not only is it going to cost a ton of money, but these people are already in the park. They're not expecting it. They're not even going to miss it. Walt looked at his accountants and he smiled and he said, that's exactly why we need to do the parade. He said, here at Disneyland, we always need to give a little more than what people expect. He said, because if we don't and they decide not to come back, it's going to cost us over 10 times the amount of money to get them to come back. Walt had a mantra, and he called it plussing. And his mantra was always exceed expectations. And he challenged his Imagineers to do a little extra. My hope is, as I leave here today, you're thinking about what's the purple goldfish for your company, thinking about what's your parade, what's your chocolate chip cookie, what's that little extra? And that when you go home, you start thinking about what's my purple goldfish. Thank you.